At midnight, the house breathed like a sleeping animal, slow, warm, trusting. Ethan Hale slid under the bed with the precision of a man used to control. Dust clung to his suit jacket, the same jacket he wore to board meetings where numbers bowed to him. His heart didn't. It thudded hard now, not from fear, he told himself, but from curiosity sharpened into something cruel. He wanted to know who Claire really was when no one was watching. And he was certain this test would give him the truth. Ethan had grown up believing love was a transaction dressed in flowers. His father taught him early, trust nothing you haven't audited. By 38, Ethan had audited everything, companies, charities, even friendships. Wealth came easy to him, intimacy did not. When he met Claire, it startled him how normal she seemed. She laughed too loudly at diner jokes, insisted on paying for coffee, and once spent an entire Saturday reorganizing the neighborhood food pantry without posting a single photo online. She didn't ask about his money. That alone made him suspicious. So he planned the test. Claire thought he was flying to Toronto for meetings. Instead, Ethan returned early, waited until she fell asleep, and slid beneath the bed in their guest room where he'd staged the scene. He placed his phone on silent, breathing shallow, rehearsing the reveal he imagined would come by morning. If she failed, he'd end it cleanly. If she passed, well, he'd finally believe. A soft rain began tapping the windows. Somewhere in the house, the furnace clicked. Then the door creaked open. Claire stepped inside, careful, as if the room were a library. She carried a tray, water, crackers, a small bowl of soup wrapped in a towel to keep it warm. Ethan frowned. This wasn't part of the plan. She set the tray on the nightstand and sat on the edge of the bed. Her shoulders sagged like she'd been holding the world all day and had finally found a place to set it down. "Hey," she whispered, not to anyone he could see. "I know you're scared." Ethan's breath caught. He strained to see through the sliver of space between the bed frame and the floor. Claire leaned down and spoke to the darkness beneath the bed. "I won't look," she said softly. "You don't have to explain. I'll just be here." His skin prickled. This was wrong. He was the one hiding. He was the one testing. And yet she was talking to him like he was someone else, someone fragile. Minutes passed. Claire remained seated, hands folded. She talked about small things. The rain, the neighbor's dog, how soup tasted better when you shared it with someone. She mentioned a woman at the clinic who cried because she couldn't afford her medication and how they'd figured something out together. She laughed once, quietly, then wiped her eyes. "I know what it's like," she said, voice barely a breath. "To be afraid you'll be judged the moment you're seen." Ethan felt a cold, crawling horror, not of being discovered, but of discovering himself. This test was supposed to expose Claire. Instead, it was peeling him open. Finally, Claire stood and left the room, turning off the light. The darkness pressed in. Ethan stayed under the bed until his limbs ached, replaying her words. When he finally crawled out, dawn was bruising the sky. He didn't feel victorious. He felt small. The next day, he told her everything. They sat at the kitchen table, mugs between them like anchors. Ethan confessed the plan, the hiding, the reason. He expected anger, tears, a slammed door. Claire listened without interrupting, eyes steady, face pale. "That's a lot," she said at last. "I know," he replied. "I was wrong." She nodded once. "I need air." She left the house, and for the first time in years, Ethan didn't try to control the outcome. He waited. Claire returned hours later. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She asked questions. About his childhood, about the fear that drove him to hide instead of speak. She told him the test hurt, but what frightened her more was how easily he'd planned it. "I don't want to be an experiment," she said. "I want to be a partner." Ethan agreed. He promised therapy, transparency, time. He didn't propose. He didn't beg. He listened. Weeks passed. They rebuilt carefully, like people learning a new language together. Ethan began volunteering with Claire on Saturdays, stacking shelves, carrying boxes, listening to stories without trying to fix them with money. He learned how heavy silence could be, and how light it felt when shared. Then, one evening, the call came. A fire had broken out at the clinic where Claire volunteered. No one was hurt, but supplies were ruined. Without thinking, Claire grabbed her coat. Ethan followed. Smoke still hung in the air when they arrived. Volunteers stood stunned, ash on their hands. Claire moved through them, comforting, organizing, finding food and blankets. She gave her scarf to a shivering teenager. She knelt beside an older man and held his hand while he cried. Ethan watched, something cracking open in his chest. He wrote a check, yes, but he also lifted boxes, swept floors, listened. When exhaustion finally took him, he sat on the curb, stood on his face, and laughed at the absurdity of it all. Later, as the night cooled, Claire sat beside him. They didn't talk about the past. They watched the stars appear, one by one. "I'm glad you came," she said. "So am I," he answered, and for the first time, it felt uncomplicated. Weeks later, Ethan returned to the guest room alone. He knelt and looked under the bed. Dust had gathered again. He smiled, a little sadly, then pushed the bed aside and vacuumed the space clean. He left the room brighter than he found it. When he joined Claire in the living room, she was sorting donations, humming softly. He sat beside her, took a stack of folded coats, and began matching sizes. The rain started up again, gentle this time.